All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome on into the next episode of the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, as always, Matthew Quinn, and we are, of course, always brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. Some news that broke just a few hours ago. We'll cover that. We'll be covering the pre-draft power rankings that I have starting from 10, and we're going to eventually work our way all the way to the number one spot, of course. And make sure you stick around for later in the show, and I'm going to be giving you my top 5 current quarterbacks in the NFL, as well as my top 5 current wide receivers in the NFL. But before we start all of that, I just want to ask that you guys like and follow the show as always. If you have a question or a comment or anything like that you want to add in, just go over to the super chat and type that in. And that is GSMCpodcast.net, or GSMCsports.net. And if you have a question during the show, we definitely do want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy and your insights. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion that you just have to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Just use the super chat feature. Just click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content that you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button, and let's keep this show interactive and exciting. And if you prefer, you can also go to GSMCsports.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or a question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're very thankful to have you guys as part of our community. And once again, that link is GSMCpodcast.net. Now, before we get into what we're actually going to talk about today in this show, there was some news that broke a few hours ago before we got on here, and that was that Russell Wilson has signed a deal with the New York Giants, and it's a one-year deal worth $10.5 million, but the max value is $21 million. $10.5 of it is guaranteed. So Russell Wilson is now off the market, and this just comes just a day after. Just a day after Jameis Winston signed with the Giants as well on a 2-year deal that was worth about $8 million. So the Giants have their 2 quarterbacks, and now you have to figure that they're probably not going to draft a quarterback with that 3rd overall pick. Most likely, I would think they're probably going to go after a guy like Travis Hunter. If he's there and they pass on him, then maybe they have other plans. You know, I know there was talk before this Russell Wilson signing that maybe Shedeur Sanders could go to the Giants, but I think that's pretty much a guarantee that will not happen with this signing of Russell Wilson, especially with the Giants signing Jameis Winston yesterday as well. So Russell Wilson is off the board, so we know about his situation now. There's only one more domino left to fall, and that is, of course, Aaron Rodgers. And we keep playing the wait and see game with him, and we'll find out hopefully in the next few days or maybe a week or so what's going on with him. But Russell Wilson is signed, and he is now a New York Giant. So that's going to be a pretty interesting offense. He has a couple weapons there with Malik Neighbors there. And they're going to probably add in the draft, especially if they get Travis Hunter. That'll be a nice little young core of young receivers that Russell Wilson has to work with. So they just have to work on protecting the quarterback because Russell Wilson showed in his last few years that he is not as athletic as he once was when he was younger. He was able to get away from pressure a lot better than he can now, but that just comes with age. I still think that Russell Wilson's got some left in the tank, and he should give the Giants, make them at least a little bit competitive in some of these games, because he's got one of the best deep balls in the NFL still at his age, at 36 or 37, I guess, when the season starts. But yeah, so the Giants went ahead and signed him, and I think that was pretty much expected. A lot of people sort of expected that was going to happen. I know I did. I thought that he was going to sign there. If he signed anywhere, it would probably be the Giants. So now it's just waiting on Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see what happens with him, but that was the story. I don't want to take too much of this first segment up talking about Russell Wilson, because I do want to get to the main part of this show. But so Russell Wilson, 1-year deal, $21 million, max value, $10.5 guaranteed. So we'll see what he does this year. But moving on to our actual first topic of the day, and we're going to do our pre-draft power rankings with the draft just under a month away at this point. Wanted to take a look at where teams are stacking up after the big rush of free agency over the past couple weeks or so. So we're going to start at number 10. I'm not going to do all 32 teams mainly because we went through season outlooks from all 32 teams. So, with the power rankings, we'll just keep it down to 10 just to keep it a little more manageable. But at number 10, I have the LA Chargers, and take a look at some of their key additions this year. They added running back Najee Harris, Tyler Conklin just recently signed, and same deal with Mekhi Becton from Philadelphia. He signed to shore up that offensive line, and they added some depth at the defensive end position in Deshaun Hand, and then, of course, they signed cornerback Dante Jackson over from Pittsburgh. So I like what the Chargers have done. One of the biggest losses that they've had on their team this offseason is when they released Joey Bosa, who is now in Buffalo. So they'll, look to maybe try and get a couple of guys to try and revamp that position. Deshaun Hand will be decent, at that spot, but you got to figure they're probably going to target some defensive players in this upcoming draft, I would think, or, wide receivers been talked about as well with them because they haven't really added too much wide receivers in terms of free agency. So, but I like what they're going to do, what their potential is under second-year head coach Jim Harbaugh. Justin Herbert, I think, is the perfect fit in LA with Jim Harbaugh. I think he can get the best out of him. So I like the Chargers there at number 10. Number 9 is a team that did not even actually make the playoffs last year, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. And I just feel like with them keeping T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, that, of course, made Joe Burrow very happy. And I feel like they are going to be a lot more determined, this year, especially with the way last year went when they started off slow and ended up missing the playoffs altogether. But I think their defense will be better because, it can't be much worse, to be honest. So there's no way that it's as bad as it was last year. And if they can have just a halfway decent performing defense, then I think they're going to be a problem in the AFC. And they've already proved that they can beat big teams like Kansas City. Joe Burrow is actually the only AFC current quarterback that has taken down Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. No other quarterback in the AFC that is currently playing has done that. So Tom Brady, of course, is the other one, but he is, since retired. But I like the Bengals here at number 9. I truly think that they're going to be much, much better this year. That offense is already loaded, and ready to go. It's just a matter of where their defense can, pick up some of the pieces. Now they're still working on trying to sign defensive end Trey Hendrickson. I know he was asking for a trade earlier in the offseason, but then, of course, the Bengals signed Higgins and Chase, and then they went back into negotiations with Trey Hendrickson to try and get him locked down as well. And I would consider that a huge win for the Cincinnati offseason overall. If they can lock all three of those guys down and still improve on the defense in the draft, I think you would count that as a very successful offseason if you're a Bengals fan. But they did sign Oren Burks, the linebacker. That was one signing that they made in the offseason so far. But, of course, the big one is Trey Hendrickson. They lost a couple guys in the secondary, but, honestly, their secondary wasn't that great last year anyway, so not huge losses. But they do need to rebuild that defense a little bit, especially with new defensive coordinator coming in. Ever since Lou Anarumo was fired in the offseason or right after last season. So Bengals at number 9, I like them there. Number 8, I have the LA Rams. They've been talked about a lot by a lot of people about having a pretty good offseason thus far. Obviously, they got rid of Cooper Kupp, and they added Devontae Adams to supplement that with wide receiver Puka Nacua, who is also, a very, very good number 1 receiver and has proven that in the first couple of years that he's been playing. There was actually news about him that was floating around yesterday when he said that he is planning on retiring at age 30. And now he's 23 years old now, so he still has, if we're going by his logic, he has 7 years left. So that's 7 quality years of football, because, I feel like that's probably why he's retiring early. If he does end up deciding to do that when it gets to that point, that'll be a whole other story, because a lot can change in 7 years. He may not feel the same way in 7 years, but then again, he may still feel the same way, but we'll see. Regardless of that, 7 more years at least with Puka Nacua, and that's prime years as well. So I feel like the Rams are doing a good job, but I think arguably the best decision that they made all offseason thus far is bringing back Matt Stafford and not allowing him to be traded. I know that was kind of a conversation. They flirted with the Raiders about that, but I think that was more of a negotiating tactic with the Rams to try and get a deal done than anything else. I don't think there was anything really serious about that visit from Matt Stafford, but good job for the Rams to get him locked down with Davante Adams in there as well. And they added some pieces to the defense as well. They added defensive tackle Poona Ford over from the Chargers. He is a very strong, very good defensive tackle to plug up the middle there. And they also added a center in Coleman Shelton as well. So like what they're doing right there with their offseason, and they should be just as good, if not better, than they were last year when they took the eventual Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles all the way to the end in the playoffs and very nearly beat them in that Snow Bowl game. But they're a good team, very well coached with Sean McVay, and I like what they could potentially do this year. So moving on to number 7. Now, this might be argued by a lot of people because we don't really know, because we haven't seen them play this particular year, but I have the Chicago Bears at number 7. And this kind of goes hand in hand with my later segment in the show when we're going to be doing some hot takes, but I'll get more into that in that segment. But I like the Bears here at 7 because, obviously the Bears had a terrible year last year, only 5 wins under Matt Eberflus, and Eberflus was fired right after that Detroit game on Thanksgiving. So, now they have a new head coach in Ben Johnson, and he's one of the primary reasons why I have them up here, because not only did they hire him and all of his offensive mind and offensive talent, they went ahead and they got Grady Jarrett from the Falcons, and they traded for Joe Thuney to shore up that offensive line along with Jonah Jackson. And they just recently signed a depth wide receiver from Washington, Olamide Zaccheaus. So they're doing a good job filling pieces around Caleb Williams, and I think Caleb Williams will thrive much more in that system this year than he did with the Bears in his first year. And if he can't get it done this year under all of those positive circumstances that are surrounding him, then you may start to question whether or not he might not be the guy overall, for the future, because that's a lot of pieces that they're bringing in there. So they're expected to be much better, and I definitely think they'll make the playoffs for sure. If everybody stays healthy, of course, that's always the main question. But I have the Bears at 7, so some people may disagree. And of course, this is, pre any football being played. This is based on where they stand right now in terms of after free agency. This doesn't have any bearing on what they did last season. This is just where they stand as a team right now at this point in the offseason. So the Bears I have at number 7. Number 6, I have the team that surprised everyone and made the NFC Championship game last year, and that is the Washington Commanders. I really like what they're doing in the offseason. That trade with Laramie Tunsil is one of the more under-the-radar moves of the year. That is probably one of the best moves of the year in shoring up that left side of that line. And they, I've beat it to the drum, that they did not really give much up to get him. So it was a really, really good deal by them. And they also got some more depth in Nate Herbig on the offensive line. Nate Herbig spent last year in Pittsburgh. He was injured for all of the year. He missed the entire season. He was injured in training camp and didn't get a chance to play, but he was their original center when they originally picked him up. He was going to be the starting center from day one before Zach Frazier took over, but obviously Herbig got hurt and Zach Frazier took over and ended up having a solid rookie year. So now Nate Herbig was a free agent, and he can also play guard too, so it's not just center. So they can do some different things with him on the offensive line. So I like that pickup there. They also picked up Michael Gallup from the Cowboys and Javon Kinlaw, and they also added more to the offensive line recently in Trent Scott. So they're doing a very good job trying to shore up that offensive line, and adding Javon Kinlaw will help with that bad rush defense that they had last year. So we'll see how they move forward this coming year, but I really like what they're doing overall. So those are my teams 10 through 6. When we come back from this break, we're going to talk about the next part of my rankings, which are the top 5 teams that I have at this point in the NFL offseason. So just stick with us, and we'll be right back right after this, and we'll get into that second segment.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're going to get into the second part of our pre-draft NFL power rankings. We're going to have numbers 5 through 1, and obviously with the last segment, there was probably some picks on that that some people might not necessarily agree with, but as everybody says when they're making power rankings, these are my power rankings, and you're welcome to disagree with them if you want. These are just my opinions on where everything stands with each team at this point in the offseason. So let's go ahead and get into the next part of the power rankings here. So I have number 5, I have the Baltimore Ravens, and this, is not really surprising. This is where we're getting into the real, contenders, Super Bowl contenders here. Every single one of these teams on this list is a Super Bowl contender, and the Baltimore Ravens are going to be coming back extra motivated after having a tremendous year, really, in the regular season in terms of running the ball and being explosive on offense. They had Derrick Henry go for nearly 2,000 yards. Lamar Jackson had over 4,000 yards passing and 41 touchdowns and just four interceptions. And he added a couple rushing touchdowns as well and almost ran for 1,000 yards himself. So he was fantastic and arguably could have won the MVP last year, and that would have made 3 MVPs for Lamar had he won that last year. So I have the Ravens there. I like they haven't done a whole bunch this offseason so far in terms of free agency. They did re-sign Ronnie Stanley, which was a good move for them. They want to keep that, solidify that right side of the line. But, of course, Ronnie Stanley is getting up there in age, and he has had injury issues in the past. So you got to look that they're probably going to try and upgrade that position. They've still got Rosengarten who can move over there to that position as well. But they're probably going to fix that through the draft, maybe add a young guy at some point in the draft. Whether it's the first round or not, that'll be determined. But as of right now, I have the Ravens at number 5, and I like what they could potentially do. I still think they're the class of that division in the AFC North. I think the Cincinnati Bengals, as I talked about in the last segment, are going to be much better and much more competitive with the Ravens this year than they were last year. I believe it's a 2-team race between the Ravens and Bengals as to who wins that division. I like everything that the Ravens represent in terms of, what they're able to do offensively. Defensively, they're always tough. They struggled a little bit last year in the early going, but once they handed reins over to Dean Pease, or once he came back to the facility and became more of a part of that defense, you really started to see, why the Ravens defense is always so good, because it was usually coordinated by Dean Pease, but he left, and they didn't have him as defensive coordinator last year, but they did have him in the booth, helping to call plays and all that. So he is obviously a great defensive mind, and it shows that each and every year, typically. So the Ravens are still good, obviously coached by John Harbaugh, and he is one of those guys that has come up recently in whether or not his seat is hot at all in Baltimore. I don't personally believe it is, but I think the argument that people are making with that is that he has had this loaded offensive team for a number of years now, and they haven't really been able to get over the hump in the playoffs. I mean, obviously they have Derrick Henry, and they just had him last year, so they've only had him for the 1 year, but they, I'm sure, are expecting nothing short of a Super Bowl appearance this coming season. I would think that that's probably a failure if they don't get that. That's probably what their mindset is as of this point, with everything that's happened with Lamar in the playoffs. Although Lamar has gotten much better and was not the reason why they lost last year in the playoffs to Buffalo, but he still has that record of not doing necessarily great in the playoffs, but he has to get over that. So he's got to win. He's got to get to the big game in order to get over that. Otherwise, people are going to hang that over his head for the majority of his career. So that's who I have at number 5. At number 4, I have the Buffalo Bills, the team that beat the Ravens in the playoffs, and obviously having Josh Allen on that team is always going to give them a shot, and they're always going to be right up there as one of the best teams in the league so long as he is their quarterback. And I can absolutely see the Bills finally breaking that curse and actually getting to the Super Bowl this year. And we'll have to see what they do in the in the draft coming up. I know we went over some of their needs when we were going through the different season outlooks for everybody. But the Bills, obviously, they don't have necessarily the big names at the wide receiver position. They have, Keon Coleman, the rookie from last year. They have Khalil Shakir still there, who's still a solid receiver. But Josh Allen, they basically do it with pretty much, relative no names. No disrespect to those players, but relative no names when you compare them to the likes of, say, a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson or something like that. But they're still able to get the job done throughout the season, and they are always usually the best team in that division. And they are, slated to be the best team in that division again this year. They are the favorites to win it because, everybody else in that division is getting better, though. So I don't think it's going to be as much of a cakewalk as it's been in recent years for the Bills, with, of course, the Dolphins, Jets, and, Patriots all struggling at various points of the seasons. But the Bills have been the class of that division. They still are. But like I said, everybody in that division is getting better. And obviously, Sean McDermott. See, the Bills they're very similar to Baltimore in the situation that their head coaches are in. They're both very, very good head coaches. Although I would say probably Sean McDermott has more of a hot seat than John Harbaugh does. For the most part, because John Harbaugh, at the end of the day, he still does have a Super Bowl title. So that does give some leeway there. But Sean McDermott does not have that, and that is one of the reasons why people have talked about him, potentially moving on, or them moving on from Sean McDermott. I think that would be a mistake because I think he's a very good coach, and any team would probably snatch him up really quickly. He wouldn't be on the job market for very long during the head coaching hiring cycle that we always get to at the end of the Super Bowl, in the next few days after the Super Bowl. But yeah, so I like the Bills there at number 4. So moving on to our top 3 teams here. The third team is the team that just appeared in the Super Bowl representing the AFC, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. I have them down at 3 because I feel like they were exposed a little bit in that Super Bowl against Philadelphia, not being able to protect the passer as much as they need to. And showing some signs of age in Travis Kelce. Then even though Travis Kelce is coming back this year for his 13th season, he showed a lot of signs last year that, and particularly in that Super Bowl, that he may not be playing for much longer. I honestly thought that he might retire this past offseason, or this offseason that we're in now, but he has already announced that he's going to come back. I don't think, I mean, I've said this a whole bunch of times and ended up being proven wrong, but I don't think the Chiefs are set up to be Super Bowl champions again this year. I just think there's way too much talent in the AFC, and I think that game against the Eagles put some, tape on that some teams can study and potentially learn from as to how to attack that offense. When you get pressure on Patrick Mahomes, that's what tends to beat the Chiefs. Even take a look at that Super Bowl that they were in, the other Super Bowl that they lost to Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. It was very similar to the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl. They got pressure on Mahomes. They beat him up throughout the majority of that game, and then they ended up blowing them out, much like the Eagles did. Obviously, the Eagles put up more points, but it was still domination in both of those games, and I think both of those games showed that is the key to really, ending the Chiefs, run, or ending their dynasty, is if you can continuously get pressure on, that offensive line. Now, the Eagles were doing it without sending much pressure at all. So if you can get pressure before, obviously you need a great defensive line and great defensive coordinator to put your players in that position to be able to do that. But the Chiefs, at the end of the day, I still have them at number 3 because they're still the Chiefs. They're still a tough team. They're still going to be up there as the team to beat. Everyone's going to look at them as the team to beat in the AFC until somebody takes them out in the AFC, because they get to the AFC Championship game every single year. Patrick Mahomes has literally been to the AFC Championship game every single year he's been the starter as the Chiefs. So they are still the team to beat in the AFC, and they're going to have to people are going to have to go through them most likely, because it's just the way it always goes. And I still have them at number 3. They are the number 1 team in the AFC when you take a look at these power rankings, because my top 2 teams are both in the NFC, and I think you can guess which 2 teams those are. So speaking of which, let's get into that. The number 2 team that I have on my list is the Detroit Lions, and obviously questions kind of abound with this team going into this coming season, because they have 2 new coordinators, as both defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn left to be the head coach of the Jets, and of course, as we talked about, Ben Johnson going over to Chicago to be their head coach. So it's going to be a different situation for Detroit. Not the same faces, so probably not the same scheme, but they've still got the same players for the most part, and will probably add some players on defense to shore up that defense that was just injured like crazy last year. Everybody got hurt seemingly, so they want to obviously add to their defense and make their defense better, because when it was relatively healthy, they still weren't necessarily great. So they lost Carlton Davis, their starting corner, lost him to New England in free agency. So they, of course, want to look at trying to shore up the secondary, as well as maybe get somebody else alongside Aiden Hutchinson to be a great edge rusher like Hutchinson is. And Hutchinson, obviously being hurt last year, definitely hurt the Detroit Lions' chances overall in the season, but they were still able to win games during the regular season. It was only until they got to the playoffs that they ended up being taken out by the up-and-coming Commanders, who we talked about in the last segment. But I like the Lions. I still like Dan Campbell. I still like them to be one of the best teams in the NFL this year. Jared Goff is still a great player. Of course, they've got that dynamic duo in the backfield with David Montgomery. So obviously they're going to be a very, very good team. They're going to be very hard to beat, as they always are. So I have them at number 2 and number 1. Got to put the Eagles at number 1 because they are the Super Bowl champions, and they have lost a lot of defensive pieces this offseason, but they've still got a squad, that they've got a lot of depth on defense, and they, can still add to that as the draft comes up here in the next month or so. But, they're a very, very good team overall, and, Super Bowl champions, very well coached, and, of course, having Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and that mammoth offensive line, all of those things help. And that's why they are as good as they are. That offensive line and their defensive line, at least last year, was, two of the best units select collectively in the NFL. They were very, very good, and that was the big reason why they won the Super Bowl, was that just winning in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And that's the way that team has been built, and they are going to be up there as the team to beat in the NFL because they have the target on their backs now. They're the Super Bowl champions, so they got to go out and defend that crown. And I think they'll do a good job in doing that. I don't know if they'll get to the Super Bowl or not. It's not quite time for Super Bowl picks just yet. Maybe we get to that after the draft and kind of see where everybody stands. Maybe we'll do a segment on who I think could potentially be in the Super Bowl, or maybe some Super Bowl matchups that people might like to see. So maybe we'll cover that in a later show. But before we go ahead and get into the next part of our show, as always, we're going to take another quick break. So just stick with us, and we'll be right back right after this.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. And before we go ahead and get into our next segment, I just realized that I did not remind you guys in the last segment that if you have any questions or anything that you want to add to the show, just go over to our super chat and type in your question or your comment. That's gsmcsports.net. Any tips and donations, always appreciated as well. And then any questions, or just if you have just anything in general that you want to talk about, just go ahead and type it down in the chat, and we'll get to it. So let's go ahead and get into the next part of our show here, and the third segment we have. And we got some kind of a fun segment that I wanted to do here. Just some hot takes / bold predictions. Now, some of these might be a little bit out there, and some of these, most people probably wouldn't agree with, but these are just things that I just thought were kind of fun that, could plausibly still happen. You never know what the NFL season can bring. It's always full of surprises usually anyway. So I always think that these sort of segments are fun because, it just kind of is just entertaining, to think that certain things might happen. And these are all, I think, relatively plausible. I don't think they're too off the wall. Maybe the first one might be a little bit, but the first one, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. The one that I brought this up in our production meeting earlier. I have the hot take of the Chicago Bears will not only make the playoffs, but they will get to the NFC Championship game. Now, I don't think they'll win. I think they will end up losing to whoever it is, whether it's the Eagles, the Lions, whatever the case. But I think the Bears will get there. I think they have the team, and they're building a unit that's going to be talented enough. I mean, take a look at the Commanders last year. They're a perfect example, of a team that you don't really see coming, and they can still surprise some people. But if you take a look at what the Bears have done so far in the offseason and what their offense is potentially going to look like with Caleb Williams potentially and hopefully getting much better under a better offensive-minded coach in Ben Johnson, and keeping those weapons around him, and maybe adding some weapons in the draft, whether it be through the running back or, something like that, or maybe another receiver. But I think the Bears have the potential to really turn it around and be one of those teams, that goes, from being dead last in the division to, going on a run and making the playoffs. So I have them making the NFC Championship game. So the other take, I have a few takes here, so we'll just kind of get through them. Another take that maybe bold just in the history of this team, but if you really think about it, it's not really too unrealistic. I have the Raiders making the playoffs, and that would, I think, mean that there's going to be 3 teams in that division that make the playoffs, and I think that's definitely a possibility. Because the Chiefs obviously are going to be most likely the winners of that division, although, that's kind of the safe take. I have a different take, of course, but the safe take or the safe bet is the Chiefs will probably win the division. That's kind of just what they always do. You got to figure they will, at the very least, make the playoffs next year because, they're too well coached and too talented, and Patrick Mahomes is too good of a quarterback. So they'll be in the playoffs, but I also think the Raiders will, because take a look at what the Raiders have done so far this offseason. They've gotten a whole new coaching staff. They got Pete Carroll coming back, and he is the Raiders coach now, and he's brought Geno Smith over from Seattle. And, of course, we've got the young tight end Brock Bowers, who's going to be going into his second year. And, teams typically like to see rookie players make the second-year leap. And if it is a leap from his first year, it's going to be a tremendous year for Brock Bowers at the tight end position. And obviously they re-signed Max Crosby on the defensive front too, so that was a good decision going ahead and getting him locked up. And I just like what the Raiders are doing, and I think they could surprise some people and maybe sneak in as a wild card, maybe get third place in that division and maybe sneak in depending on how the rest of the conference goes. But that's who I have making the playoffs there. That's my hot take for that particular one. Another one is that the Buffalo Bills will finally get to that precious Super Bowl. And if history tells us anything, they will probably lose that Super Bowl, because that's kind of what the Bills do when they do get to Super Bowls. They just lose. I mean, they went to 5 straight Super Bowls in the 90s and lost every single one of them. Or it might have been 4 straight. I might have that number wrong, but my brain's just kind of mush from looking at a bunch of stats and history and all that over the past few days. But the Bills have had that curse of just being absolutely heartbroken in the playoffs. But I think they finally get over that heartbreak and they get to the Super Bowl. And it's too early to do picks, but I got to think that if the Bills finally get to the Super Bowl, they got to win it. They got to win it this time. They can't just keep going to Super Bowls and losing them. They have to win it at this point, and I think that would be great to see for all the people of Buffalo, the city of Buffalo, and of course Josh Allen, because he's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. So it would be cool to see him get a Super Bowl ring or get to play in the Super Bowl, because at the very least we would see some really good plays and really crazy plays from Josh Allen, as he is that backyard football kind of player. So I have the Bills there as one of my hot takes, and maybe that's not a hot take because of how talented they are and how they're always in there at the end anyway. And so maybe it's not necessarily a hot take, but the fact that they haven't been to the Super Bowl with Josh Allen and that unit around them with the coaching staff and all that, I guess that would be kind of a bold prediction more so than a hot take. So, because I feel like a lot of people would probably believe that the Bills would go ahead and get to the Super Bowl, because they've been favorites before. They were favorites last year at certain points of the year when they were playing some really, really good football. Despite the fact that the Chiefs were the number 1 seed overall, the Bills, some people actually thought that this was going to be the year that they would beat the Chiefs. I thought it might be as well, but it just didn't end up working out that way. And, they ended up losing another heartbreaker to Kansas City. So that's a hot take there. The other hot take that I have, it might break a bunch of people at ESPN's hearts, but Mike Tomlin will have his first losing season this year. And I also almost put this as a hot take as well, but I just don't think this is going to happen. But I almost put that the Steelers will finish last in the AFC North. But then I remembered the AFC North has the Cleveland Browns in it. So the Steelers will most likely finish third, I think. I don't think they finish behind the Browns. They never have, and they never have finished in last place in that division, So don't predict that they will actually do that, but I think that this might be the year that they have their first losing season, especially if they go ahead and sign my favorite quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, the guy that I love to talk about, in a negative light, of course. But I just think that combination there is just not going to be enough to overcome that, seemingly unending record of him managing, or Mike Tomlin that is managing to get his team to 10 wins or 9 wins and either sneak into the playoffs and get blown out, or just miss the playoffs because they lost some games that they shouldn't have lost at some point during the season. But that's another hot take that I have there. And maybe they finish last in the AFC North. And honestly, I think that might be the best thing for them if it happens. I really would not be totally against that. Sure, it wouldn't be fun to watch as a Steeler fan to watch your team lose game after game, but I would at least be at peace with the fact that they're going to be in better position to draft their potential franchise quarterback next season in a draft class that is much better than the current quarterback draft class this coming draft in just a few weeks, I guess, at this point. So the other bold prediction that I have, or hot take, is that the Chargers will be the team that wins the AFC West, not the Chiefs. So I just like what the Chargers have done so far, and I like that they added Najee Harris to their running back room. I think that is a good signing, good pickup for them, and I think he'll fit right in, and he'll have a much better quarterback than he ever has had as, a running back, as a professional running back. Because, yes, he played in Ben Roethlisberger's final season, but Ben Roethlisberger's final season was not the real Ben Roethlisberger. So he was a shell of his former self at that point. So Najee Harris has not had good quarterback play his entire career, really, and now he gets to go to a place that actually has that as a threat. So now he can get a little bit more opportunities to maybe make some plays, and I think Jim Harbaugh is a much better coach to be able to put him in the right positions to make those big plays. So I like Najee Harris going there. And, they lost Joey Bosa, but really he hadn't really done as much as what they would have liked in his time in LA. So I don't think they were too concerned with letting go of Joey Bosa. They did re-sign Khalil Mack as well. So that's another piece that just comes back to the defense. So that'll be good. They shored up some secondary with Dante Jackson. Dante Jackson was in Pittsburgh, and I personally thought that he was a solid defensive back. He led the team in interceptions. He did battle through a back injury towards the end of the year, and it kind of held him back a little bit. But I think when he's healthy, he's a solid corner. He may not be a lockdown corner or anything like that, but he was definitely an upgrade over what the Steelers had the previous season at that position. So I like Dante Jackson there. And, of course, they shored up their offensive line as well with Mekhi Becton, and so I really like what the Chargers are doing. And I think that they could sneak this AFC West division title right from underneath the Kansas City Chiefs. That's, it's a prediction, but, I think it's very possible. They've got the team to be able to do it. They just get a couple of players on offense. They re-signed Mike Williams, who really had his most success as a Charger previously before his 2 stops in New York and finally in Pittsburgh last year. So he's back, and I think he fits right into that system as well. So Chargers winning the AFC West, that's what I have. And the final hot take that I have here is I think that 2 teams are going to go worst to first in the NFL this year, both of them coming from the NFC side. And the first one may be kind of cheating a little bit because most of their team was hurt last year, but I have the 49ers going from worst to first. They were worst last year. They were last place in the NFC West because of tons of injuries to Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy fought through a couple things too. Tons of injuries. Brandon Ayuk was hurt. Deebo Samuel was banged up a little bit from time to time. And that's just to name a few. They had a ton of injuries, and it really ruined their season. And this is still a very good team. So I think they absolutely have the potential to get right back into contention in the NFC this year. As long as their guys can stay healthy, I really think that the 49ers can be one of those teams that go from worst in the division to first in a division. And the other one, which is part of my hot takes that kind of connects with the first one. So we'll kind of bookend it here with the Chicago Bears as a team that will go from worst to first. That's right. The Chicago Bears will win the NFC North and head to an NFC Championship game. I have high hopes for the Bears, and I'm sure I will be crushed or, proven wrong or whatever the case as the season, goes on, because the Bears tend to do that with their fans anyway, is they get their hopes up in the offseason only to have them dashed when games actually start to kick off. But I think it'll be different this year. I think the Bears are going to be good this year. So that's who I have as my two teams going worst to first. So those are my hot takes. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you disagree with any of them, which I'm sure most people probably do because they're hot takes, they're made essentially to be disagreed with. That's to get the conversation going and to get people to give you likes and all of that fun stuff that we like here on YouTube. So before we go ahead and get into the last two segments of our show, we're just going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about we've got two top fives to end the show. We've got a top five current quarterbacks, which will be next, and then the final segment we're going to do wide receivers as well. So stick with us, and we are going to be right back right after this break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, guys, welcome on back to the show. Before we go ahead and get into the rest of it, just any anything that you guys want to say or comment on any of my lists so far, greatly appreciated. And I would love to hear if anybody disagrees with any of my takes at all, because that's always fun to get a debate going. But let's go ahead and get into the next part of our show, and that is top five quarterbacks in the NFL that are currently playing. So at number 5 that I have, as we just get right on into this, I have Jalen Hurts, the Super Bowl champion from just a few months ago. Take a look at his numbers last year. Obviously, he won the Super Bowl, so that's the biggest thing on his resume. But 68% completion percentage, just a shade under 3,000 yards passing, 18 touchdowns passing, just 5 interceptions. He also had 630 yards rushing and 14 touchdowns last year. I think he proved in that Super Bowl in particular that he is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. He deserves to be mentioned. He's a Super Bowl champion now, which is more than he can say for some other guys that are on this list, as there really is only 2 Super Bowl champions that I put on this list, funny enough. But Jalen Hurts I have at number 5. I really like his fit with the Eagles. That's just a match made in heaven. He's perfectly suited for that team and for that offense. Obviously, having Saquon Barkley is a big help, and having great receivers on the outside like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith definitely help as well. But Jalen Hurts is a fantastic quarterback. You don't think about too much of his, running ability so much, because a lot of the rushing touchdowns that he has were through the brotherly shove play, the essentially glorified quarterback sneak that the Eagles run. He gets a lot of touchdowns on that, and he gets a lot of touchdowns down by the goal line on just, scrambles or sweeps or design draws, things like that. He's very, very good at all of that. Don't get me wrong, but, he doesn't necessarily break 60-yard touchdown runs or anything like that, at least not like every other game or anything like that. He may have 1 or 2 of those on his resume. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but he has a total. He had 18 touchdowns passing, 14 touchdowns rushing. So, he had 32 touchdowns overall last year. So he could have been in conversations for MVP as well. Those are MVP type numbers, 32 total touchdowns and 5 interceptions. That's a pretty good ratio to have, and still, solid in the running game as well. So Jalen Hurts definitely belongs in the top 5 in my opinion, and I think that Super Bowl in particular is what proved that. So number 4 that I have on this list is Josh Allen. he is your reigning league MVP. He last year had 12 rushing touchdowns, but as far as throwing the ball, he was 63% completion percentage, 3,731 yards, 28 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. That was the big thing with Josh Allen last year, is he cut way down on his interceptions. He was, in his earlier years, he was a little reckless with the ball. He would make some incredible plays like he still does, but his thing was that he would have these issues where he would throw, bad passes or passes into double coverage or triple coverage or whatever the case, and just wouldn't be great to watch. But he still always made plays. That was the one thing. His great plays far outweighed the mistakes that he made, but he really cut back on that this year. Only 6 interceptions. He was fantastic and well deserving of that Super Bowl. And he's another guy, or not the Super Bowl, the MVP. And he's another guy that had 12 rushing touchdowns, 28 touchdowns on passing. So he had a total of 40 touchdowns total on the year and 6 interceptions. So that's a very good year, of course, and well deserving of the MVP. So he's number 4 on my list of top quarterbacks. Number 3 that I have is the guy that a lot of people might think should have won the MVP last year, and that's Lamar Jackson. And you take a look at his numbers. That's very, very, it's hard to argue that you want him as the MVP. If you take a look at it, it's 66% completion percentage, which is more than Josh Allen had. 4,100 yards, which is more than Josh Allen had. 41 touchdowns passing. 45 total touchdowns, but 41 touchdowns passing, just 4 interceptions. Both of those numbers better than Josh Allen. And then, of course, just a shade under 1,000 yards rushing with 915 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns, all better than Josh Allen's numbers, except for the rushing touchdowns. Of course, Josh Allen had more than Lamar did, but Lamar was fantastic all year last year. Like I said before, he wasn't the reason why they lost that playoff game to Buffalo, but he is, he's one of those guys that's just, he's electric. He can really hurt you with either his feet or his arm. Earlier in his career, he wasn't necessarily, at least, mainstream media, a lot of people built him up to be an incredible quarterback before he was an incredible quarterback, in my opinion. I think he is now, but back when people were hyping him up a lot, I don't think he was quite there yet. But where he is now at his game, he's best that he's ever been. He is a very, very good passer of the ball. He's drastically improved in that over the years. And, of course, he's always been a great runner of the ball. That hasn't changed. He just has another weapon in the backfield, so that gives him more opportunities to take off and run, because a lot of people are kind of focusing on Derrick Henry running the ball, and rightfully so. So Lamar Jackson can take off. I know in that playoff game against Pittsburgh, they were getting them with the quarterback draw each and every time, and because they're focusing so much on Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson is just taken off untouched. But that's the threat that they pose with that offense there, and Lamar Jackson being able to do that, and that's why he is as high up on this list as he is. Now, number 2, I have Patrick Mahomes as the second best quarterback on this list, and that's right, and he is second overall. And this is just an overall quarterback. This is not based on, how many Super Bowls they've won. Otherwise, Patrick Mahomes would be number 1 on this list. But this is just overall quarterbacks. I think Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback, future Hall of Famer, first ballot, one of the greatest to ever do it, no doubt. All of those things are absolutely true. I just don't have him at number 1 just yet because of the performance that the guy at number 1 had last year and what he consistently does. But as far as Patrick Mahomes, obviously AFC champion last year, got to the Super Bowl, but I think everybody can agree that the offense wasn't nearly as good as we're accustomed to them being. And they're usually very explosive, and they weren't necessarily that last year. Mahomes still had decent numbers. He had 67% completion percentage, just a shade under 4,000 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Probably more interceptions than he would like. More interceptions that you're typically used to seeing him throw, to be honest. But he doesn't have the weapons that he once had with Tyreek Hill and all of them. A lot of the guys that they had on offense that were supposed to be big weapons for him were injured. Like Rashee Rice, he got hurt by Patrick Mahomes in some friendly fire in a game where he tore up his knee. But they still had Xavier Worthy, who ended up being a pretty solid wide receiver as a rookie and will only get better, of course. So obviously Patrick Mahomes gets to the Super Bowl, so he deserves mentioning, and he's usually always in the Super Bowl. You know, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, so you got to put him in the top 2, in my opinion, for sure. So Patrick Mahomes is your number 2 quarterback that is currently playing in the NFL in terms of just overall ability. And number 1, I have Joe Burrow here. And Joe Burrow is the only guy in the AFC that is currently playing that has beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. So he has proven that he can do it. He can go head-to-head against Mahomes, and really should have beat him last year as well in Arrowhead, but if not for a controversial defensive pass interference call at the end of the game that was talked about a lot in the coming days after that game, but they ultimately lost that one. But Burrow, his numbers speak for themselves last year at least. He had a 70% completion percentage, far and away the best in the league in that regard. He had the highest passing yards, 4,918 yards, more than any other quarterback, 43 touchdowns passing, more than any other quarterback, and then he had the 9 interceptions. The problem that Joe Burrow had last year was that he was on a team that did not like to play defense. Their offense was putting up 30-plus points per game, but their defense was giving up about 30-plus points per game. So things just didn't really work out for the Bengals because of that. Their liabilities on defense is what ultimately cost them a shot at the playoffs and potentially another matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead to potentially move on in the playoffs. And they've proven that they can do it before, so, you know, they've definitely got to be up there as consideration, you know, for a team this year that could do something and do some major damage if they can stay healthy and if they can get that defense going again. But Joe Burrow, I think, absolutely deserves to be number 1. I think he is the best pure passer, pure quarterback overall in the NFL right now. He doesn't have the accolades like Super Bowl titles. He's played in the Super Bowl, but he doesn't have any Super Bowl championships or anything like that. But this list right here is not based on Super Bowl champions. I'm just basing my list on physical quarterback ability overall, how they play overall, you know, in the NFL. And that's kind of where I'm at. Because, you know, you can make the argument when Aaron Rodgers was in his prime, a lot of people were saying that he was the best quarterback overall in the NFL. But he's not the greatest quarterback over, say, Tom Brady. When Tom Brady was playing in his prime, Aaron Rodgers was in his prime. And though a lot of people still said Aaron Rodgers was the best quarterback, Brady was still considered the greatest. So it's, you know, there's a difference there. And I kind of am more in the lines of just technical ability and all that. So these are the guys that I have as my top 5 in the NFL. And it'll be interesting to see if anybody sneaks into this top 5 in the next coming years, or if any rookies that are coming out this year, if they end up being one of those great quarterbacks that we've seen in the past come from seemingly out of nowhere and end up being very, very good quarterbacks in their career. So that's my list. Jalen Hurts at 5, Josh Allen at 4, Lamar Jackson at 3, Patrick Mahomes at 2, and Joe Burrow at number 1. So we're going to take another break. When we come back, it's going to be our final segment of tonight, and we are going to be talking about the guys that the quarterbacks throw to, and that is the wide receivers, my top 5 wide receivers in the NFL. So stick with us, and we will be right back for our final segment of the night. All right, guys, welcome back to the final segment of our show tonight. And we're going to be doing top 5 wide receivers in the NFL currently. We just did the top 5 quarterbacks, and I will probably do top 5 running backs in tomorrow's show too. So definitely look out for that as well. But let's dive right into our top 5 wide receivers that I have. Number 5 on this list is a young guy who's a rookie last year, and that is Malik Nabers from the Giants. And especially with the addition of Russell Wilson as the quarterback that we just learned right before we got on the show, I think that'll make him an even better even better wide receiver this year, because, you know, that's the one thing that's good about Russell Wilson is that he can hit the deep ball, and Malik Nabers can go get the deep ball for sure. And especially if they add a guy like, say, Travis Hunter, and that could absolutely take some more pressure off of Malik Nabers, and they could end up being a really, really good wide receiver duo going forward. I really like Malik Nabers. Take a look at his numbers last year for a rookie. You know, even for just a regular, you know, wide receiver, rookie or not, those are still really, really good numbers. But his numbers, he had 109 catches, 1,204 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That's good for an 11 yards per catch average. So he was very, very good, very productive on a team that was starving of a quarterback all year long. Daniel Jones started the season, obviously got benched, ultimately was kicked out of New York and moved on to Minnesota before ultimately signing with the Colts in the offseason. But then they had Tommy DeVito, who ran the show for a number of games, as well as Drew Lock as well. So they didn't necessarily have the greatest quarterback play. They will have better quarterback play this year, just with the addition of Russell Wilson. By default, they will have better quarterback play. So with better quarterback play, hopefully they'll also have better offensive line play, which can keep Russell Wilson upright, and then he can find those receivers downfield. Malik Nabers is a very talented young receiver, and he can be one of the greats going forward. I think he's very, very good, and he's rightfully so right at number 5, in my opinion. Number 4 is a guy who also plays in New York, but he plays for the other New Jersey team, and that is Garrett Wilson of the Jets. He is fantastic. I mean, some of the catches that this guy makes are just unreal. The one really, really famous one from last year, the Jordan brand catches, you know, what I've heard a lot of people call it, where he just sticks his arm out, you know, and just is like leaning back, somehow just makes the catch with one hand, and it looks like he's posing like the Jordan brand logo, and it's, you know, it was a tremendous catch, you know, and he's a very, very good receiver. He's another guy that hasn't had very good quarterback play in his career, yet is still as good of a receiver as he is. So just imagine how he will be, you know, with a good quarterback. Justin Fields, I think, is a good fit in New York with Garrett Wilson, you know, reteaming with his former college teammate in Justin Fields. I think that's going to be a pretty good match for them, because the Jets are going to let Justin Fields be himself in terms of being able to run the ball, and that'll open up more things throwing the ball, which is one thing that I wish they would have done in Pittsburgh when Justin Fields was there. But they kind of just made him play safe. I don't think he's going to be safe. He might be more conservative from things that he might have picked up last year in Pittsburgh. I don't think he's going to be as reckless with the ball as he was, say, in Chicago. But you know, they're going to be able to let him do more. So I think Garrett Wilson will have more opportunities to be effective overall. So I think that's a good pairing for those two. And he had 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns last year, despite not playing for a great quarterback last year. So, and of course he's put up good numbers with Zach Wilson at quarterback. And, you know, with all the other guys at quarterback that they've, you know, ran through under Robert Saleh, and I guess now it's Aaron Glenn as the head coach there. So Garrett Wilson, number 4. Moving on to number 3, I have CeeDee Lamb from the Cowboys. I think he is another guy that has gotten a little bit of slack because he hasn't had the greatest quarterback situation either. Not that Dak isn't a good quarterback, but Dak has had injuries, and so CeeDee Lamb has had to play with Cooper Rush a lot. And last year, CeeDee Lamb played with Cooper Rush a few times, and he had 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns with Cooper Rush. So, you know, he is another guy that if he can just get consistent, steady, quality, good quarterback play, he can boost those numbers up to the top two guys that I have on this list. As I'm sure you guys can probably guess who the top two on the wide receivers list is, because both of those guys, they put up ridiculous numbers every year. But CeeDee Lamb is a very good receiver. Very, he hasn't really been looked at as like your top 5 or top 3 receiver, I think, even though I think that he is that. But just being on the Cowboys and having the Cowboys struggle like they have the past few years has maybe, not shine as much of a light on CeeDee Lamb as it should be because of how good he is. But I don't know. I think he is up there as top 3 as a wide receiver. His pure ability and his ability to run crisp routes, make good catches, his ability to separate from the defender. He's a very, very good wide receiver, and that's why he is at number 3 for me. So getting down to the top 2 receivers in this entire league, and I don't think either of these will be a surprise. You can make the argument for either one of these guys being the best receiver in the league, but at number 2, I have Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson, fantastic receiver. Like I said, you can make the argument that he's the best receiver in the league. It's a close one between him and my number 1 guy here. But Justin Jefferson last year, 103 receptions, 1,500 yards receiving, and 10 touchdowns. He was second in the league in those categories to just Jamar Chase. But he was fantastic last year, and he's been fantastic for Minnesota. And he was one of the reasons why Sam Darnold is making as much money as he's making in Seattle. Because if it's not for Justin Jefferson being as good as he is, maybe Sam Darnold doesn't have the numbers that he has. Because not only can Justin Jefferson make all kinds of ridiculous catches, but he can take pressure off of other receivers, like, say, Jordan Addison, the other quality receiver that they have in Minnesota. Some pressure would be more, hinted towards Justin Jefferson, and that would give Addison more opportunities, and Hawkinson if they want to go tight end route, But Justin Jefferson is definitely one of the best, if not the best receiver in all of football. And he has proven that. And the only thing that he's really missing at this point is a Super Bowl, because he's just that good. He's, had the record, or had, the receiving yards record, in terms of leading the league in receiving. He's done that before multiple times. So at this point, I'm sure he's looking at trying to get a Super Bowl, since he got his nice big contract a couple off seasons ago. So this focus now should just be only on the Super Bowl. And they have a rookie quarterback this year, so we'll see if his numbers take a little bit of a dip or a little bit of a hit, depending on how good J.J. McCarthy ends up being. We don't know yet, because we haven't seen anything from him in terms of playing in a real NFL game, not a preseason one. He did play in the preseason before he ended up getting hurt. Torn meniscus it was for J.J. McCarthy. I was corrected on that because I said torn ACL before, but I think it was a torn meniscus actually. So apologize for the mix-up there. But, they've got J.J. McCarthy now, so we'll see if he is ready to be a starter. Only time will tell with him. He's got to go out there and he's got to take some hits and get used to playing in the league at, as fast of a pace as the league plays at. So Justin Jefferson might suffer. Justin Jefferson might help J.J. McCarthy be a better quarterback. It certainly wouldn't hurt, having a guy like that. So the other guy that I have on this list is Justin Jefferson's college teammate, and that is Jamar Chase, who I have at number 1. It goes without saying that he is the best receiver in the league. Last year, he was the best receiver in the league, period. He won the Triple Crown, which is leading in all categories, which is receptions with 127, yards with 1,708 yards, and 17 touchdowns. So that led the league in each and every one of those categories. So Jamar Chase, best receiver in the league, and I don't think it's an argument. I mean, like I said, maybe you can say Justin Jefferson, but Jamar Chase, I think, just is right now is the better receiver. He certainly was a better receiver last year. The numbers prove that, with 7 more touchdowns than Justin Jefferson had. But of course, you could also say Jamar Chase had Joe Burrow throwing the ball to him, and that offense was more talented than the Minnesota Vikings offense was. And that is true. But the Vikings also have a good defense to, help that offense out. So those numbers can get kind of skewed, whereas Jamar Chase with the Bengals, they don't have a very good defense, so they have to put up these numbers. Jamar Chase has to be this good, and luckily he is. And they were able to put up a lot of points, although it wasn't enough as they weren't able to make the playoffs. But if their defense can shore up, Jamar Chase could end up winning himself a Super Bowl MVP and not just a Triple Crown if he performs well in the Super Bowl. He's already played in the Super Bowl, but wasn't able to win it against the Rams. But I think with that trio of offense, they're always going to have that window open as to if they can win a Super Bowl. It's just mainly going to depend on their defense. That offense is always going to be good. So we'll see what happens. But those are my 5. Again, I'll just go through them again. Malik Neighbors of the Giants. Garrett Wilson of the Jets at number 4. Number 3, I have CeeDee Lamb of the Cowboys. Number 2, I have Justin Jefferson of Minnesota. And then number 1, I have Jamar Chase of Cincinnati. So that is my top 5. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys enjoyed the show overall. This is the end of the show, so unfortunately you don't get to see my beautiful face anymore until tomorrow. So I appreciate everybody joining and watching this show. Going out of here, I just want to let you guys know we are always sponsored by GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference, and we also invite you to follow us on all the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, or X, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and we'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, guys, you guys have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.